The entire reality TV industry is trembling after Kirk Frost finally broke his silence. For years, viewers have watched the drama, betrayals, and shocking twists play out on screen. But Kirk claims that everything we believe to be true was a lie. From backstage manipulation to cast members being coerced into violent altercations, Kirk is revealing the dark truth about what actually happens behind the cameras. And the biggest shock of all is that he was set up. Sources close to Kirk reveal that he has been holding on to this truth for a long time because he was afraid of what might happen if he spoke out. Kirk Frost had been silent for too long, but now he wasn't holding back any longer. He sat in a dimly lit room, and his expression was serious, almost as if he was carrying the weight of something he had kept hidden for years. He's ready to spill everything about the lies, betrayals, and power moves happening behind the scenes. Who was in on the setup? What did producers force him to do? And most importantly, why is he speaking out now? The show that made Kirk famous and the platform that turned his personal life into entertainment for millions of people were both meticulously planned, manipulated, and scripted in ways he never could have imagined when he first signed on. But what pushed him to speak out now? Why was he finally telling the truth after all these years? Fans have been speculating for years that reality TV wasn't as real as it seemed, but hearing Kirk say it outright changed everything. Finally, he exhaled slowly before saying the words that sent shockwaves through the industry. It was never real, none of it. Scenes at first, it was minor things like the producers asking him to repeat lines, telling him to react a certain way, and even suggesting how he should react in emotional moments. He dismissed it, believing it was just part of creating good television, but then things got more serious. One night in particular changed everything for him. The lights were bright, the cameras were rolling, and he had just entered what he thought was a typical scene, but something felt strange. Rashida was standing there with her arms crossed and her eyes filled with the kind of forced tension that only occurs when someone is being coached on what to say. Kirk later discovered that producers had already spoken to Rashida before he even entered the room, telling her exactly how to respond. They had given her lines, planted ideas in her head, and transformed a straightforward conversation into a heated argument for ratings. But that wasn't the worst part. As soon as Kirk began to defend himself, a producer intervened during the scene. He heard an unexpected voice say, "No, no, no, say it like this." The cameras cut, leaving Kirk stunned. This wasn't reality TV. This was a scripted setup. They needed conflict and drama. As he sat in his dressing room that night, staring at himself in the mirror, he overheard a conversation that made his blood run cold. One of the producers whispered to a crew member, "Just tell Rashida we have something on Kirk." Kirk couldn't believe what was happening. He had been manipulated into being the bad guy for years while the show's producers planned every fight, betrayal, and emotional breakdown. However, there was something even darker going on behind the scenes, something that made Kirk wonder if it was still worth it to stay on the show. What did they mean by something on him? What were they planning? He soon realized that they were no longer just faking scenes. They were fabricating whole scandals, and this time they were going to use his name to carry out one of the biggest betrayals of all. At first, he thought he might have misheard, but as the rumors persisted, he realized that there was no miscommunication. The producers were planning something that would make him appear worse than ever before. For years, Kirk had been portrayed as the antagonist of hip-hop and love, and every plot seemed to center on his errors. Cheating scandals, his drama with Rashida, and regardless of what he did or how hard he tried to change things, the show always managed to pull him back into the same storyline. Now that they were planning something even bigger, he had to find out what it was, so Kirk did something he never would have thought to do. He started spying on his show. Late at night, when the cameras were off, Kirk started hanging around the production crew, listening in on conversations, watching how things were set up, and what he learned shocked him to his very core. The producers weren't just manipulating the cast, they were paying people to lie on camera. Between a new female cast member and one of the show's top producers, she had only been on set for a few weeks, but now she was going to play a significant role in Kirk's plot. You just have to say you had an affair with him. Kirk's heart nearly stopped an affair with him. Kirk didn't even know this woman. He had hardly spoken to her, but here he was, offering her money, telling her to lie on camera, and claiming that she had been secretly involved with Kirk behind Rashida's back. The show didn't just thrive on drama, it created it. He couldn't believe it, but for years he had held himself responsible for everything. He had carried the guilt of being the bad guy, the unfaithful husband, the man who couldn't keep his family together. However, he now realized that the show had never given him a chance, and they needed a villain, and he was their perfect target. However, Kirk was done playing their game, and if they thought they could control him forever, they were mistaken. This time, he wasn't going to sit back and let them ruin his reputation. Instead, he was going to fight. Kirk had been the antagonist of love and hip-hop for years, the husband who was always in the middle of a scandal, the man who couldn't stay faithful. But now he knew the truth. The producers had been controlling the story all along, and the worst part was that they were going to do it again. Kirk knew he had to do something. He couldn't just sit back and let them ruin his reputation again. But the question was how far they were willing to go if they were already paying people to lie on camera. What had they done behind the scenes? The more he considered it, the more irate he became. He took out his phone and began looking through old producer messages when he saw an old text from a former cast member warning him, "Be careful, man. They're setting you up." Kirk's stomach dropped. When it didn't work out, he decided to confront the producers directly because he wasn't the first and needed answers quickly. The following morning, he arrived at the studio earlier than usual. The set was quiet, with only a few crew members getting ready for the day, but Kirk wasn't there to film. He discovered one of the executive producers, a man he had known for years, but now viewed in an entirely different light. "Tell me the truth," Kirk said in a steady but tense voice. "How much of this is real?" The producer hardly blinked. "Come on, Kirk. You've been here long enough. You already know the answer to that." Kirk clenched his jaw. "So the new girl, you're paying her to lie about me." The producer's hand through his hair. "It's not about lying, Kirk. It's about giving the audience what they want. They want drama, they want chaos, and that's what you're the." Kirk's hands balled into fists, but he forced himself to remain composed. If the producers had fabricated his drama, how many other people had they manipulated? How many cast members had been caught in this cycle of lies and deception? Then something else hit him. "You're ruining my life for ratings." Perfect storyline. Kirk felt the surge of rage. "Your life," the producer scoffed. "Kirk, we made you. Without this show, you're just another guy trying to stay relevant. The scandals, the cheating rumors, and the fights, that's why people care about you. Without us, you're nothing." When Kirk was called in to film, he did something he had never done before. He secretly recorded every conversation with producers, every time they tried to push a narrative, and every time they whispered instructions into the cast members' ears. What he captured was worse than he could have ever imagined. The entire franchise was Bill Clum, and Kirk knew he needed proof, real proof. So he came up with a plan. If they wanted a storyline, he was about to give it to them, but on his terms. "We create the drama before the season even starts," the voice said. "We plant ideas, push certain cast members to say things, and if we need to, we make things up." Kirk listened to the playback in disbelief, but this was the proof he needed, and he had to make a decision because if he exposed this, he could destroy the show, blow up love and hip-hop, take down the producers, and more. Then there was the worst recording of all, a private conversation in which a producer admitted that some fights had been staged from the beginning. Eventually, they cleared his name, but he knew that meant they would come for him. The network had powerful connections, so if he disagreed, they wouldn't just let it go. They would do whatever it took to keep the show safe. Then, as Kirk was considering his next course of action, he received a phone call that entirely changed his life. A deep voice on the other end of the line said, "You would rather not do this, Kirk." And then the line went dead. Kirk's heart raced. Who was that producer? How did they know what he was planning? Had they already discovered that he was recording at that time? Kirk was their biggest threat, and he realized how deep this had gone. This was no longer just about reality TV. It was about control, power, and safeguarding the empire they had built. The question now was what he would do about it. Someone was watching him. Someone knew exactly what he was up to. His heart pounded as he looked around his living room, wondering if he had gone too far and if he was in danger. He needed to talk to someone he could trust. Rashida was the only person who came to mind. He called her, and as soon as she answered, he knew she could hear the tension in his voice. "Kirk, what's wrong? Could he trust her with this?" "I need to see you," he said. "It's serious." There was a pause on the other end, and then Rashida sighed. "Kirk, if this is about the show, it's not just about the show." He cut in. "It's about everything." "They're lying to us, Rashida. They've been lying for years." "Come over," she said, her voice becoming softer. "An hour. They did this to us. They controlled everything," Kirk said. "Every time we fought, every time we broke down, and every time you doubted me, it was all set up. They knew exactly how to push us." Rashida exhaled sharply and we fell. Later, when he was sitting across from Rashida in her kitchen with his phone on the table between them, he played the recordings, the whispers from the producers, the instructions to fake fights, and the stage drama that had almost destroyed their marriage on TV. And with every second that went by, he watched Rashida's face change, first confusion, then disbelief, and finally anger. Kirk leaned forward for it, saying, "They're going to do it again." And Rashida looked away, rubbing her temples. "They have this new girl who says I cheated, and they don't care. They're setting me up to be the bad guy again, and if I don't fight back, they'll ruin me. So what do we do?" "I expose them," Kirk said without hesitation. "I go public. I put everything out there. The recordings, the lies, the manipulation, everything." Rashida's eyes widened. "You don't just go against the producers, you'll be going against the entire network." "I know," Kirk said, "but I don't have a choice." Kirk's head snapped up when she said, "If you're going to expose them, I'll back you up. I've been on this show just as long as you have. If I speak out too, people will listen." This was the first time in years that he and Rashida were truly on the same page. However, before he could say anything, his phone buzzed. She looked at the screen and froze. "It's one of the producers," she muttered. Kirk tensed. "Don't answer it." But Rashida was already tapping the screen. She said, "Hey," cautiously, and Kirk watched as her face darkened. "What do you mean? Keep Kirk in check?" she snapped. "He's not doing anything wrong." She stopped abruptly, her lips pressing into a tight line. Whatever was being said on the other end of the call wasn't good. Her eyes slowly met Kirk's, and the fear in them sent chills down his spine. She ended the call, staring at her phone as if it had just burned her. "They know Kirk's blood ran cold. They know about the recordings. They know you're planning something," she whispered. Kirk leaped to his feet, pacing the kitchen, and asked, How could they possibly?" "They've been watching me this whole time," he muttered. Now it made sense, the phone call, the warning, the way the producers were suddenly acting different. "They're trying to scare me," Kirk realized. But then Rasha shook her head. At the last time he met with the producers, they had cameras and microphones recording everything. She added, "It's worse than that. They want to dominate you, not just frighten you, and if they can't, they'll make sure you never work in this field again." The room fell silent, and Kirk realized she was right. If he went through with this, if he revealed everything, he wasn't just risking his place on the show, he was risking his entire career. Then, before Kirk could think about what to do, his phone buzzed again. Rashida and Kirk looked at each other, and he answered slowly. A deep, unfamiliar voice said, "You need to stop, Kirk." "Kirk," your grip on the phone tightened. "Who is this?" The voice ignored him. "You're making a mistake. Walk away now, or you'll regret it." The call ended, and Kirk suddenly realized that this was about power and that someone didn't want him to talk. Kirk stood. He had been in this business long enough to recognize an indirect threat when he heard one, and when he heard it, Rashida saw the tension on his face and grabbed his arm. "Kirk, When is that? He exhaled sharply, trying to keep his voice steady. They know what I'm doing. They asked me to stop before it's too late. Rashida's eyes widened, Kirk. This isn't just about a show anymore. You're messing with powerful people. If they came after you, Kirk knew she was right. This was bigger than he had anticipated, but he couldn't back down now, which is precisely why I have to do this for Rashida. I've allowed them to control my life for too long, and I won't let them scare me into silence. She shook her head, fear flashing across her face. But what if they ruin you? Kirk laughed bitterly. Ruin me? They already did years of playing the villain, years of being portrayed as the bad guy for ratings, and years of watching his real life fall apart while producers sat back and tallied their profits. I'm taking charge of my story. He sat down and rubbed his temples. He had recordings that showed how the stage manipulates people to create drama for views. If he released them, people would see the truth, but they would also come after him. Rashida sighed and crossed her arms. Then we do it smart, making sure it's everywhere before they can bury it. Kirk looked at her in surprise. You're with me on this, she said. They used both of us, and I'm done letting them win. Kirk felt something he hadn't in a long time. He still had a chance. They spent the next few hours going through the files and picking out the most damaging ones, the clips that would rock the foundation of hip-hop and love, and he knew exactly where to send them, not to TMZ or some gossip blog that could be bought off. He needed real journalists who had exposed corruption before he made the call. I have something that's going to change everything. The journalist on the other end didn't even hesitate to send it over, and Kirk's hands were steady as he hit send. They waited for hours before the leaks occurred, and the headlines went viral. Hip-hop and love fans were shocked, so social media exploded, forcing them to fabricate drama. This show was worse than we thought. People analyzed every detail, including clips of producers coaching cast members, footage of reshoots that made emotional fights appear staged, and emails discussing how to turn real-life events into more compelling storylines. The backlash was immediate, with fans demanding answers, other cast members speaking out, some confirming everything Kirk said, others remaining silent out of fear of losing their place, and finally the network's carefully worded statement. That said nothing whatsoever. We take these accusations seriously, but we remain true to our integrity as a reality TV show. Sponsors began to withdraw, and advertisers didn't want to be associated with the show now that it was being called exploitative and manipulative. Kirk had done what he set out to do, but he knew the fight wasn't over. He waited for the backlash to hit him, and it did. The network cut him off completely. He lost all love in hip-hop, all deals, and all industry connections. Business partners stopped calling, and he was blacklisted overnight. However, for the first time in years, he felt free. As he watched the cast unfold, he realized one thing. They had spent years controlling his story, but now he was finally telling it himself. Kirk Frost had just done the unthinkable, risking everything to expose the truth about love and hip-hop. Surprisingly, the fans had his back. They may blacklist you, but we still support you. Even Rashida saw it. The network fights back. Will other cast members come forward with even more shocking revelations? Or will this entire scandal be buried like so many other industry secrets? Fans are already taking sides. Some are supporting Kirk, while others are questioning his motivations. Was this about justice, or was it just a publicity stunt? One thing is for sure, love and hip-hop will never be the same again. Kirk's truth has exposed the lies that kept fans glued to their screens for years. However, is this the end of his career or the beginning of something even bigger? Only time will tell. We want to hear from you now. Did he make the right decision by coming forward with the truth? Or should he have just left quietly? What do you think will happen next? Will the network take revenge? Or will other cast members come forward? Please let us know in the comments below. If you want to be certain not to miss the next shocking update on this drama, make sure to hit the subscribe button and enable notifications. The story is far from over.